This has been the difference between Africa and Europe, for instance. Since 500 years ago, Europe started undergoing socio-economic transformation until it has become a middle-class and skilled working-class society, while Black Africa has remained a late Iron Age society. Even that late Iron Age technology was disrupted and distorted by colonialism. Africa has therefore ended up with enclave economies, small modern sectors surrounded by seas of backwardness at the periphery of the modern international society. Some of the Asian countries have, however, undergone the necessary socio-economic metamorphosis. This is what Black Africa must do. Fortunately, now, Black Africa is beginning to wake up, and our forward march is unstoppable. The stimuli for this socio-economic transformation are: 1, education and health for all; 2, liberalization and private sector-led growth with government intervention where necessary; 3, value addition to our raw materials instead of just losing value to other countries through an unequal formula of specialization and exchange. This is the modern form of slavery, where we get only 10% of the international value of our exports. 4, modernizing and expanding the infrastructure, especially electricity, railway systems, roads, and ICT. 5, regional integration to create bigger markets for our products and viable economic blocs which can negotiate credibly with others in the world. 6, insisting on a fair trade regime by calling for the ending of protectionism by the developed countries. 7, sustaining democratic governance with discipline based on the minimum standards of do's and don'ts instead of wild anarchism and opportunism. And 8, building capable states with the necessary state pillars, i.e. parliament, executive including capable armed forces and other security services, and a corrupt-free judiciary. In spite of our many problems, I'm glad to say that Black Africa is at last waking up. What we need is understanding, support where possible, and no obstruction. When Black Africa achieves socio-economic transformation, the Commonwealth will indeed become an association where prosperity and empowerment are common to all. This will also enable our countries to become effective partners in building a more equitable and sustainable future for the whole of mankind.
You African, let me tell you something before we start. Africa was once the richest continent in the whole world, in the whole planet, in the whole galaxy. Africa was the richest continent. Listen as to why. I'll give you my thoughts and we will have a critical analysis by the end of the video.
2 years ago, in December 2007, the Commonwealth Fraternity gave us the honor of holding our biannual meeting in Uganda. Ugandans still have fond memories of that meeting. When I first met Your Majesty some 20 years ago, I pointed out that CHOGM was the only international gathering where we do not use interpreters when we are speaking. Even when I attend the African Union meetings, I must put up with the inconvenience of using earphones to hear what the Portuguese, French, Spanish, and Arab-speaking Africans are saying. This is why we are trying to popularize Swahili to solve this problem. at least for East Africa. I remember pointing out to Your Majesty that this was an asset that should be used. This English, which we all use, is an asset that could be used. The only drawback has been unequal development in the Commonwealth, where unfortunately wealth has certainly not been common to all. By wealth, I mean prosperity, not just natural resources, which of course are abundant in Africa. This problem is entirely the responsibility of the least developed countries to solve the problem of underdevelopment. All we need from the developed countries, as far as Uganda is concerned, is understanding and no obstruction from the developed countries. That is why, when we had the chance to host CHOGM 2 years ago, we agreed on the theme, transforming societies to achieve political, economic, and human development in the whole world.
I don't know if you'll believe me, but let me tell you one thing. There was a time Africa was the richest continent in the whole of this planet. We had rich people like Mansa Musa. We had the Egyptian civilization. Everything nice was coming from Africa. Africa had all good things. Ghana was not called Ghana. Ghana was called the Gold Coast. Cote d'Ivoire was not just called Cote d'Ivoire. It was full of ivory from elephants. Africa was a rich country, let me tell you. There was a time we didn't have the Sahara Desert. It was all forest until climate change came about. But that's really, really long time ago. There was a time Africa was the place to go. Africa is the powerhouse of the whole planet, you know. There was a time Africa was ruling the whole world until everything changed. Mansa Musa was a very rich man, very, very rich. He's considered the richest man who ever lived till now. He's richer than Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk put together. This man could walk around throwing golds and giving gold for free on his pilgrimage to Mecca. You know, Mecca is where the Muslims go each year for their tradition. That is what they do. Anyways, the Europeans were a poor country back then. They moved to Africa to find resources and exploited resources. You see, they would say that they discovered a landmass. You cannot discover a landmass with the people inside. How can you discover something that people have seen for centuries, for years, and you're saying that you discovered it? No. You just exploited it. You are the first to exploit. So the Europeans were trying to look for raw materials to power their machines back home, to do their activities, to things that would make their economy rise. You get me? So the Europeans first came to Africa and discovered that Africa was rich. When they discovered that Africa was rich, they started calling one another. And this started with Vasco da Gama. Vasco da Gama was trying to find a sea route to India. Trying to find a sea route to India. You see, there's a strait on the north of Africa, somewhere in Egypt, up there. There's Mediterranean Sea. So that place was blocked by some empire. I think it was the Ottoman Empire. It had blocked that sea route. So they were trying to find a new sea route to India at a place called Goa. So while they were traveling, they reached places. They reached Cape Verde. They reached Cape of Good Hope when they were losing hope that they are heading somewhere. They reached there. They did their things. They got to South Africa. They said, hey, the journey is long, let's have a rest. And then what happens? They put an establishment. They proceed leaving South Africa and they go all the way to India. No, they went to Pemba. After Pemba, they went to Zanzibar. After Zanzibar, they went to Mombasa. After Mombasa, they went to Goa in India. And then in 1501, 2, 3, or 4 maybe, they came back to Mombasa and established a port. They established a fortress. It's called Fort Jesus. It's Up to date, it still exists there in Mombasa. The Portuguese colonized Africans for 200 years. The Portuguese colonized Africans for 200 years. Why would you colonize someone whom you can't get something good from them? They were exploiting Africans. They were using Africans as slave commodities, sending them to India, sending them to West Indies, sending them to the East China Sea. Yes, they were doing this. This changed when someone called Sultan Said Said. Sultan Said Said was a sultan from Zanzibar, from Oman. Oman is a country in Middle East. Its capital is Muscat. Yes. So he came and he chased away the Portuguese after they ruled Africans for 200 years. The Arabs came and settled in East Africa. They went to Zanzibar. The climates of Zanzibar were very favorable as compared to the climates of Oman, you know. He established his empire here, and this is how the Arabs got themselves into the East African shores. They displaced the conquerors, the Europeans. These Arabs were not also good people. They enslaved Africans. They took Africans from the Eastern African coast all the way to the Gulf, to the Middle East. These Africans were castrated because they didn't want the breed of blackness. You see? All these histories just there outside on the internet, on Wikipedia. This has to tell you something. The tree with the ripe mangoes, the tree with the ripe apples will be thrown stones. Yes, it happens outside here. It happens with our family. It happens with our friends. It happens with our politicians. It happens internationally. The tree with the ripe fruits is thrown stones because there is something you can get from it. You throw stone, you're expecting a ripe fruit to fall. You take and you bite it and you feel it sweet. Then you throw another one. Africa is this tree that has been thrown stones for many days, for many years. You know, Africa was richer than Europe. Africa was richer than Asia. Africa was richer than the Middle East. Africa was richer than the USA. The slaves who were taken from Africa are the ones who went and worked in USA. When those red Indians refused to work for the white slaves, to the white enslavers, the black people were taken from here and went and worked there. We are rich in human capital. We are rich in resources. We are rich in abundance. Africa is a very, very nice country. Africa is the closest, an African is the closest that you have to the original human being. Is the closest that now we have to the original human being. Because even Charles Darwin, who is a white person, in his theory of evolution, I don't really believe in the theory of evolution. I believe the Most High created humans. But in the theory of evolution, he says that life started in the East African savanna. The East African savanna is found along the Rift Valley. The Rift Valley is a 3,000 kilometer stretch, starting from the Horn of Africa up to the shores of Mozambique, of the Indian Ocean in Mozambique. So along this path, we have the savanna. It's a plantation, it's a vegetation. Life started here. We have those Gyptopithecus, Ramapithecus, Homopithecus. Life started here. Even for scientists, they agree. Those people who are denying that Africans, we are naive, Africans, we are primitive, they don't know what they are saying. And I'm sorry for them. They should go and learn history. Well, you know? So when you sit back there, you an African, be privileged, because Africa is where it all started. Africans, we were once rich until we were rooted. We were looted. Even right now, we are still rich, but we are still being looted by puppets. It's only that Africans are reawakening. It's good that we have leaders such as Museveni who can be able to talk their minds address this issue publicly without fear of the West. And this is what we need. This is the change Africa needs right now. Let's realize what we have. Let's understand also what we lost in order to appreciate what we have and keep hold of what we have right now. Yes. So I hope you stay encouraged. I hope you learn from this video and you're able to learn from the president, the good president, Yoweri Museveni. Stay encouraged, stay informed, stay African, stay black. Thank you for watching. I appreciate. Oh, do subscribe to the channel, support me on Patreon, give the video a super thanks. Remember this, do which you find favorable. I will still appreciate.